It could be Jeff Mullins, it could be Jerry West, it could be, but as you've already discovered, it's attractive.
In today's era of basketball, it's safe to say that women's basketball has come a long way since its humble beginnings. It may, however, be surprising to discover that women actually began playing basketball less than a year after Dr. James Naismith invented the game in 1891. Back in 1892, Cinda Barrison Abbott, also known as the mother of women's basketball, adapted James Naismith's rules. Then, in 1899, Barrison, a figure of women's basketball and the author of the first basketball guide for women, became the first woman to introduce and adjust rules for women's basketball by simply modifying the existing men's rules, including 3 zones and 6 players on each team. More than 100 years later, and female basketball players can now dunk, as well as play the game with a skill set that rivals the men's game. As if that isn't impressive enough, many talented female players now have the ability to showcase their abilities professionally, thanks to the thousands of female basketball players who are being recruited, scouted, and offered scholarships every single year. Along with the discovery and continued growth of the WNBA, the sport is sure to go on even further than ever before. However, this was not always the case. Prior to April 24th of 1996, when the WNBA League first became established, there were no other options for women. Nonetheless, it was also during this time that one of the greatest centers ever to play women's basketball would come across a life-changing experience. To become the first woman to be drafted not by the WNBA, but the NBA, and to the world's surprise, actually succeeded. This is her story. Welcome to NBA Insider. The date is April 24th, 1996, and the NBA Board of Governors has just approved the concept of a Women's National Basketball Association to begin play in June of 1997. For more than 20 years, the WNBA has featured the game's best women's basketball talent in the world and created some of the best moments in women's basketball. The fact of the matter is that women's basketball is steeped in tradition, some of it frustrating, most of it fascinating. Take a look back at some of the WNBA's bright past and discover an impressive history of players that have left their mark. Since that day in 1996, there have been many firsts for the WNBA. Val Ackerman, the first president of the WNBA. Sheryl Swoopes, the first player signed to the WNBA. Cynthia Cooper, the league's first most valuable player. The Houston Comets, the first WNBA champions. Lisa Leslie, the first WNBA player to capture all 3 MVP awards in one season, as well as the first woman to dunk the ball in a WNBA game. Then, of course, there's Lucia Harris, the first woman to become drafted not by the WNBA, but the NBA. Considered to be one of the pioneers of women's basketball, Lucia Harris played as a former female American basketball player and was believed by many to be one of the greatest centers. She was big, relentless, and dominated the paint like no woman before her. Born in Mentor City, Mississippi on February 10, 1955, to parents Ethel and Willie Harris, a homemaker and vegetable farmer. As the 10th of 11 children and 4th of 5 daughters, Lucia grew up alongside her siblings, all of whom enjoyed playing the sport of basketball. As a teenager, Harris attended Amanda Elsie High School, located in Greenwood, Mississippi. During her time there, from 1971 to 1973, she won the Most Valuable Player Award 3 consecutive years in a row while serving as the team captain and making the state All-Star team. She also scored a school record 46 points in one game and helped lead her school to the state tournament in Jackson, Mississippi. Then, in 1973, after graduating from high school, Lucia had plans to attend Alcorn State University, which unfortunately at the time did not have a women's basketball team. You see, during that era, women's basketball was not as popular as it is today. Due to this, not many colleges offered a basketball program that enabled women to participate in athletics at all levels. However, Margaret Wade, a former female basketball college standout and Hall of Fame coach at Delta State University, decided to recruit Lucia instead. Luckily for her, Wade was starting a women's team in Cleveland, Mississippi, and felt that Lucia would be a perfect fit for the team. And she was right. At first, Harris was a shy individual, mainly due to the fact that she was the only black player on the roster. However, as a freshman in the 1973 season, that shyness would be overtook by skill, as Lucia would help lead the Delta State women's basketball team to a 16-2 record. The following year, she would once again lead Delta State with 32 points and 16 rebounds in a 90-81 victory over Immaculata University to win the national championship. In 1975, the two schools would once again meet in the national tournament final, with Harris once again continuing her domination on the court while recording 30 points and 18 rebounds in a 69-64 victory. In the 1976 season alone, the 6'3" center averaged 31.2 points and 15.1 rebounds per game. She also led the nation in scoring with 1,060 points, including a 58-point game against Tennessee Tech. As if that wasn't impressive enough, when Delta State returned to the national tournament final in 1976, the 185-pound star player would go on to record 23 points and 16 rebounds while leading her team in a 68-55 win over Louisiana State University for their 3rd consecutive title. In the end, during Delta State's 3 winning seasons, the team compiled a 109-6 record. This success was mainly thanks to Lucia's input as an outstanding player. By the time she concluded her college career in 1977, she recorded 2,981 points and 1,662 rebounds, while averaging 25.9 points and 14.5 rebounds per game. Her 2,981 career points were the 8th best in women's college basketball. She also had a career shooting percentage of 63%, which at the time was the 4th best in women's college basketball. During her 4-year career at Delta State University, she was a 3-time All-American, 4-time All-State All-Region, Team MVP, and Team High Scorer. She held 15 of 18 single-game and career records. As the team's leading scorer and rebounder, Lucia Harris was an unstoppable force, but even that barely described her approach to the game. In 1975, Harris was selected to represent the United States national team in the FIBA World Championship for Women in Columbia, along with high school star Nancy Lieberman, including fellow college stars Ann Myers and Pat Head. Harris would help lead the United States team to a 4-3 record and finished in 8th place. That same year, she was nominated to play in the 1975 Pan American Games in Mexico City, Mexico. Harris and the United States team went undefeated in 7 games to win the gold medal, their first win since 1963. The following year, Lucia was once again selected to represent the United States in the 1976 Summer Olympics in Montreal, Canada, the first ever United States women's basketball tournament in the Olympic Games. She once again teamed up with most of her teammates from the 1975 Pan American Games, including Lieberman, Myers, and Head. In the opening game against Japan, Harris scored the first ever points in a women's Olympic basketball tournament. The United States team would win 3 games and lose 2 games against Japan and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union team went undefeated and won the gold medal, while the United States team won the silver medal. In the end, Harris played in all 5 games, averaging 15.2 points and 7 rebounds per game. In 1977, After showcasing her outstanding skills and receiving an outrageous amount of accomplishments, Harris would graduate from Delta State University with a bachelor's degree in health, physical education, and recreation. To this day, it is safe to say that the basketball realm has never seen a woman like Lucia Harris. Simply put, the girl was a beast. As one of the greatest centers to ever play women's basketball, she was considered by many to be one of the first and most important figures. She single-handedly changed the face of women's basketball forever. However, what had caused her to have an even bigger impact on the history of women in sports is the fact that she was the only woman to ever be drafted by the NBA without the pick being voided by the league. As mentioned before, she was big, strong, had a quick step to the basket, was a relentless rebounder, and an outstanding shooter. Along with these skills and her outstanding achievements at Delta State University, the New Orleans Jazz of the NBA felt that she would make an appropriate fit for their roster. So, on June 10, 1977, the franchise selected Lucia Harris with the 137th overall pick in the 7th round. Keep in mind that this was back when the NBA draft had more than 2 rounds. Looking back at it, many people believe that the Jazz, which played only a few hundred miles from where Harris played college basketball, took the 6'3" center most likely as a publicity stunt. This made sense considering that in the 13th round of the 1969 draft, the San Francisco Warriors selected Denise Long, a girls' high school player from Wheaton, Iowa, who averaged 62.8 points per game in her senior year. Although many thought she became the first female ever to be drafted by an NBA team, it would be discovered that the selection was later voided by the commissioner as a publicity stunt. For this reason, Harris was extremely cautious of her decision. However, in their defense, the New Orleans Jazz were indeed serious about their selection as they expressed great interest in her abilities. Regardless, when Harris was drafted, she too thought it was all a joke. Drafted by a professional men's basketball team in a league dominated by men, it was too good to be true. Although it was true that at the time, many thought she could dominate the average male player, the NBA was a whole different game. Aside from this, Harris believed she had to be realistic. The chances of her succeeding as a female be revealed that Harris was actually pregnant, which prevented her from being able to attend the Utah Jazz's training camp. Due to this, on September 1st, 1980, the Utah Jazz, formerly known as the New Orleans Jazz, had their draft rights for Lucia Harris renounced. Despite the fact that she couldn't play for the Jazz mainly due to her pregnancy, it was interesting to note that she still managed to get selected in the draft ahead of 33 other male players, including the Jazz's 8th round selection, Dave Spiker from the University of Toledo. Following this, Lucia Harris briefly played professional basketball in the 1979 season with the Houston Angels of the Women's Professional Basketball League. Then, in 1984, after her basketball career officially ended, she returned to Delta State University to work as an admissions counselor and assistant basketball coach while earning her master's degree in education. In 1992, Harris and former player Nera White became the first 2 women ever inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Harris became the first African-American woman and one of only a handful of women to ever be inducted into the Naismith Memorial National Basketball Hall of Fame. In 1999, she also became one of the first women included in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame and the International Women's Sports Hall of Fame. After leaving the assistant coaching post at Delta State, she served as the head coach at Texas Southern University in Houston for 2 years before returning to her native Mississippi, where she worked as a high school teacher and coach at her high school in Greenwood. She has since had 4 children and is currently a teacher in her home state of Mississippi, where she also coaches basketball. While many fans still wonder if there was another female basketball player that made it to the NBA as well, the truth is that there has been a handful of other female players out there who have attempted and come close to accomplishing the same feat as Lucia Harris. However, in her defense, these players were not officially drafted. As mentioned before, in the 1969 NBA draft, the San Francisco Warriors found as the 174th pick. However, she was never able to actually make her professional debut in the NBA, as her pick was considered more of a publicity stunt than anything else. Eventually, the Warriors' draft pick was disallowed by league commissioner J. Walter Kennedy. In the end, Since the NBA didn't draft high schoolers or women, they actually vetoed her selection. Then, of course, there's Ann Myers. In 1979, Indiana Pacers owner Sam Nasi called the #1 women's basketball player in the nation to try out for his team. Then, on September 5th, 1979, just days before the Pacers rookie camp was to start, Myers became the first woman to sign an NBA contract, which was reportedly worth $50,000. While it was true that she was the first woman to actually sign an NBA contract and try out for an NBA team, she was not the first drafted, and ultimately, even she did not make the roster. Therefore, realistically speaking, Lucia Harris went down as the first female player to officially be drafted into the NBA. Since that day, the WNBA has become a thriving league that has gained a lot of ground. However, with more athletic competition being introduced to the NBA than ever before, who knows if there will ever be a time in history in which a female basketball player will come across an incident similar to that of Lucia Harris, Denise Long, and Ann Myers. With that being said, it's safe to say that Lucia Harris, the only female to be recruited in the NBA, will forever go down as one of the most unusual draft picks in NBA history.